Good morning, everyone. I've been asked to present our next plenary speaker to you, probably because I'm the only person in this room who can really pronounce her name properly, because we are both from Poland, right? So Hanna Kryszewska. Hanna Kryszewska is a senior lecturer at the University of Gdańsk in Poland. She's an author. She's a co-author of research books, of a course book series, and also a co-author of a video-based teacher training course. She's been involved for years now in teacher training in Poland and worldwide. And for years she has cooperated, as she has already told you, with Pilgrim's language courses in Canterbury, UK, and Department for Continuing Education in Oxford. And since February 2006, Hanna has been the editor of the website magazine Humanizing Language Teaching. She is also a regular presenter at national and international seminars and conferences worldwide, and today it's our pleasure to have her with us. Hanna?
Good morning. I've said hello to some of you, hello to those who have just joined us. Like I said at the very beginning, I'm being sponsored by Pilgrim's Language Courses, who were kind enough to fly me out here. 3 airplanes to get from Gdańsk, where I live, to Thessaloniki. 17 hours our journey. Okay, but it's worth it. I'm very happy to be here. And Thessaloniki is a very special place for me. Like I said in the interview for the newsletter, Thessaloniki was my first ever international conference years back, and my first plenary ever. So I don't think anybody remembers that. You're all far too young, okay? So I edit also Humanizing Language Teaching website magazine. I have already circulated a mailing list for you to join. You can do it yourselves online. You see, this is the website and the typical contents page. And at the bottom there is something like, would you like to receive publication updates from HLT? Join our free mailing list. So you can do it yourselves, or we will do it for you if you have signed the list. Also, you can refer this page to a friend, a colleague, friend, colleague, and then the word will spread. The issues appear every 2 months, and all the articles are then available for free in the archive. So it's one of those publications which stays online forever. So your article and your contribution will stay there and be available to teachers. Please remember, if you publish an HLT and you think you have got an article somewhere in your head, in your drawer, in your waste paper basket, sitting and waiting to be discovered, please get in touch. We will get it published and we will work on it together. And I can also issue the certificate of publication and everything you need for the school to get your brownie points or not. So, depends. Some teachers say, I don't want my school to know that I publish, because they will think I have got too much free time and perhaps she should be kept busy otherwise, if you see what I mean, okay? But for example, in the student voices section, can you see here? Where are your student voices? Student voices. You can publish your students' work or your students' opinion about why I like the communicative approach or why I don't like pair work. We had the series, My Worst Teacher, My Best Teacher, quite an eye-opener. So at the very end, I will pass the list around once again, and those who haven't received my card will get a chance so that we can keep in touch, and please keep in touch. Now, so that's Pilgrims. Also offers lots and lots of teacher training courses. Please go on the Pilgrims teacher training website. Fantastic courses which all are inspired by the 21st century skills and visible learning I was talking about yesterday, and Erasmus Plus grants are one of the ways you can cash in your course and come and join us. So we hope And if you're on the mailing list, you will get updates what's going on. Also scholarships. There is a Pilgrim Scholarship or Humanizing Language Teaching Scholarship for which you can win and go to TESOL UK. For this year, the scholarship is closed. The Bonitsai Creative Teachers competition and scholarship, which is available. You just had to submit some lesson plans, creative lesson plans, and the best lesson plans would be then the reason for you to win the scholarship. And so many things happening, and we will let you know. Okay, now the talk starts. When you go to conferences, sessions, you see little gems, little pearls of ideas presented by the author. One session. If you go to a conference, you get more little pearls, which you treasure, which you collect, which inspired you. You keep them in your treasure box. And the more you go to a big conference, there are many ideas, many little treasures you take back home, and so on and so on. However, it's probably to do with me being in the field for so many years. I'm beginning to think, what's the map of the field? What would be the bird eye view of what's going on? How do these little pearls fit in? And this is what today's talk is about. The 21st century skills is something that has been talked about ever since the beginning of the 21st century. In education in general, my talk is how 21st century skills could fit into ELT. And lots of developments in education fit into ELT, or don't, or we kidnap them. In this morning's session, F. Tihis, who was talking about blended learning, he said that blended learning wasn't invented for language teaching. Blended learning was invented for education in general. And many things are invented for educational purposes, and we language teachers kidnap it. And I would like us to see how we can kidnap 21st century skills, still bearing in mind the bigger picture. And as an example, I would like to use multiple intelligences. And relax, I am not going to talk about multiple intelligences. It was 1983, so it's 30 years old. And people still talk about multiple intelligences in EFL, but in fact, we have kidnapped multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner wasn't that keen on hearing that it's just about language teaching, or we suddenly, this is one of the main tools for language teaching. And also, we took multiple intelligences, like this little pearl droplet, the treasure that we cherished and we developed and we used, and it has been very inspiring. But in fact, it was just a tip of the iceberg, a tip of the whole educational movement, and a bit taken out of context. Because when you look at the multiple intelligences are the product of the work of Perkins and Howard Gardner in the years 1972 to 2000. But it wasn't the only thing that they developed. Multiple intelligences were combined with teaching for understanding, manifestations of understanding. Show me what you have understood. And this is the kind of area that did not travel well into EFL. And another one was teaching through fine arts. And very often we pigeonholed teaching through fine arts as a way to introduce CLIL. Or VACOG, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory input, and fine arts was used as the beautiful visual impact and developing the aesthetics taste of our learners. But really, multiple intelligences came together with, it was broader field, the map, the view of the field was much, much broader. And in fact, there's a whole development over years since the 60s, what Project Zero has been doing for education. And it's important because eventually it will develop visual thinking, which overlaps with 21st century skills. So Project Zero started in 1967, and at first it was just about how people learn. Then when Gardner and Perkins took over, it was teaching through understanding, multiple intelligence as fine art. Now, Project Zero deals with investigations into the nature of intelligence, understanding thinking, creativity, ethics, other essential aspects of human learning. The mission is to understand and enhance high-level thinking and learning across disciplines. So you can see critical thinking, CLIL, blended learning, all things come into this mission statement, including in a range of contexts, including schools, businesses, museums, digital environments. So education leaves the school, education is everywhere, and this is what Project Zero deals with now. Howard Gardner, by the way, has now become sort of senior advisor to the project, and he has much less to do with the day-to-day research. Now, in fact, he has abandoned multiple intelligences. If you think what's happening to Howard Gardner these days, he developed a new way of thinking about education. Because he's a psychologist, educational psychologist, he works with models. And multiple intelligences, teaching for understanding, was a model which worked at a certain point, helped education to move forward. Now we need to have a next step. And he's into the 5 minds of the future. I really, really recommend his talk. And there are many talks on YouTube, but I prefer the one on Fora TV, which is not YouTube, which he gave in Aspen Institute. Half an hour of the highlights of of the 5 minds for the future. Philosophy, which way education in the 21st century should be going. But definitely education as we know it from the late 20th century is dead, or should be dead. In fact, Gardner says something very, very nice. He says, the world as we know it doesn't exist anymore. We don't notice the changes are happening so fast that we think certain things exist, but they don't exist anymore. Things have moved on. I love this quote. I think we need to remember that. And thank you for nodding. Now, the 5 minds for the future, fantastic model. This is kind of the London Underground style of representing multiple intelligence, the 5 minds for the future. It's the most important, the first one is disciplined mind, synthesizing mind, creating mind, respectful mind, and ethical minds. And this is what education needs to work on. Language teaching is really not mentioned there. Language teaching is subservient to whatever you will be doing. But you may be doing it in English. And the important thing is that the disciplines you need to work in is either or master history, the arts, mathematics, or science. These are the areas to specialize in according to Gardner. Very important, critical mind, being critical of the resources. Creative, being able to synthesize. Human knowledge multiplies every 5 years now. So we need to be able to synthesize and know what we need to remember, what we don't need to remember, and being able to use any available resources to know where to find things rather than remember them. Here my guru is Albert Einstein, who apparently remembered no mathematical formula. He said, I know where to find them. So you don't need to take up your brain capacity remembering, right? You know where they are. And this is Gardner. This is what he's working on. Now, nice quote. I believe that current formal education still remains basically preparation for the world of the past, rather than a preparation for the possible worlds of the future. Now, sorry. And when Gardner gave up on multiple intelligence and started working on 5 minds for the future, his mates, Perkins and company, continued working on education, and they went from teaching for understanding into making learning visible, the talk I gave yesterday. But again, this is about native speakers becoming, learning how to voice and show what they think, how they think, and how to document their thinking. And of course, because these are native speakers, they don't need any language input, they don't need their present perfect or conditionals. So we cannot reform our language teaching totally in taking visible learning on board, but we can have elements that will include visible thinking, and we will be then in tune with the other trends in education and what may be happening in other subjects. And finally, what they talk about now is the cultures of thinking, creating and building a culture of thinking so that the classroom becomes a thinking community where their thinking is visible. And a very interesting book, Making Thinking Visible. As you can see, David Perkins's name is as the author of the foreword, and he is the sort of guiding father to the project. And there are a number of thinking routines which they have been developed. We can adapt them for classroom use. I'm told that lots of CLIL teachers use the visible thinking techniques in their classrooms. Now let's go back to the broad view. Again, we have focused very much on Project Zero, but there is something happening in Harvard, right? Project Zero Harvard. There's something happening independently, or it may seem is happening independently. Let's talk politics. Barack Obama. A quote from his speech: "If we want America to lead in the 21st century, nothing is more important than giving everyone the best education possible from the day they start preschool to the day they start their career." This is called the K-12, K-12 project. So from kindergarten to grade 12. And this success that hopefully will await the graduates at the end of their educational career is being more competitive and being more successful on the international markets. Another quote: "I'm calling on our nation's governors and state education chiefs to develop standards and assessments that don't simply measure whether students can fill in a bubble on a test, but whether they possess 21st century skills like problem solving, critical thinking, entrepreneurship, and creativity." So from two independent places we can see the political and the academic. Harvard University, we have got very, very similar messages that education needs to change. And for us, the question is, how can it change? How can language teaching change? How we can fit in or adapt to the 21st century skills? And even if we don't do, our country's educational system doesn't do 21st century skills yet, there is nothing wrong with the language teachers being in the avant-garde, as usual, okay, taking on board, because you have seen it. Multiple intelligences entered language teaching very quickly. We started using multiple intelligences. EFL books were published, materials developed, and then suddenly your Ministry of Education wakes up and says, oh, let's start and let's implement multiple intelligences, this new thing. And we turn around and say, what new thing? Okay? So being in the avant-garde is always good, and we can already start developing our materials and thinking along these lines. It will also, I promise you, help us to make our lessons more interesting, our educational programs more relevant to the learners, who will see better why they're doing certain things, and they will see the benefit of these programs. And as you can see, the 21st century skills is one set of names with Howard Gardner appearing, but only with reference to multiple intelligences, whereas the Project Zero is a completely different set of names. So they seem to be two separate worlds. I don't know what separates them, whether it's politics, money, power struggle, but clearly two independent bodies are saying the same thing. But when you look at the 5 Minds for the Future and the 21st century skills, really there are different representations of roughly the very similar things. If you write to me, I will send you the PowerPoint, so you don't need to worry to take me. An independently book, 21st Century Skills, interesting, but it's not for language teachers. It's generally about education. So we would have to select what is applicable for language teaching. And now, to look where education actually is at this point, we have got very strong agrarian element. In the summer, when the crops need to be collected, we don't teach. How relevant is that? And all the holidays around the periods when more hands were needed on the farm and the kids had to leave schools to help the parents out. In the Middle Ages brought division into subjects. Do we really need to divide into subjects? Can we have more holistic approach? Industrial age brought in clocking in and out, periods of doing things, bells ringing. Now, all these elements are really outdated. They don't apply anymore because we are entering what is now called knowledge age, where you can be doing your safari somewhere at the same time you can be doing your homework and learning. What's the right time to learn? Can be midnight, can be 5 a.m., especially if it's flipped classroom approach, where the learning is done by the learners themselves through all sorts of e-learning, blended learning, and the activation, the showing of understanding happens in the classroom. So a completely different way of looking at education, much more independence in the hands of the learners. So perhaps these are the things we need to get rid of, or be aware how outdated they are. Now, what are the main 21st century skills? Oral and written communication, critical thinking and problem solving, creativity and innovation, collaboration and working in teams, media literacy and applying technology, professionalism and work ethics, leadership and project management. And these are the key points that are taken from that book, 21st Century Skills, and other sources. And I would like you to talk you through now through my personal interpretation of what I believe I could do to implement the 21st century skills in the classroom. What could I tweak? What I could change? And I think each of you, with this particular list, you could think, oh, how could I do some leadership with my little ones? Or how could I do some creativity? Or other areas, how I could address them more. And you would be implementing or working towards the 21st century skills through the language classes, oral and written communication. The first thing that I have taken on board is teaching people to speak. But not express themselves, but to speak and communicate. Penny was talking yesterday about the importance of how important communicative approach is. And it is vital. But how do people speak? The important thing is being able to engage in genuine communication. To back channel. Somebody speaking, oh really? Oh. Especially if you're talking to English people. The ability to hold, showing that you want to carry on speaking, or how you show that you really want to carry on listening. All the features of spoken grammar need to be taken much more on board. People speak in a foreign language, but sometimes they offend, or they don't know why other people don't want to engage. A very good example from Pilgrims, we had a group of international students, and the activities people who are native speakers, teenagers or young adults, who are supposed to chat to these people, people attending the course. And in a staff meeting, they said, we're trying to talk to them, but they don't want to talk to us. They're not interested in us. And we started observing, and what happened? The foreigners didn't go, oh, really? Oh, they didn't back channel, show interest in what the other person was saying. And being aware of this, I'm not trying to say that now we are going to turn everybody into an English person. No, and follow an English discourse, but be aware of the various discourse patterns and where things can be going wrong. Polish people are terrible at holding the conversation. They will never let the other person speak. If you want to have your voice, you have to interrupt. Now, where is this, in international communication? Things can get a bit complicated. Be it with friends or people you would like to be friends with, or informal, professional situations. Now, in many exam situations, there is some sort of act out a conversation, or task in a course book, act out a conversation. And there is this language that they're supposed to use, functions, the content is what they're supposed to say, and very little on manners. Have you noticed that? Do we teach manners? And I think that it becomes more and more important because young people, spend too much on their tablets and too little with other people. And we were talking about this in the plenary, right? Or we heard about this in the plenary. So good manners. Phone calls. When I hear Polish people make phone calls in English, I think, oh my God, how rude. Because what they don't do, or even in Polish, when they phone, they don't say, is it the right moment to call? Or they don't do enough small talk before, or too much small talk. Because you need to feel very well when the time for small talk is up. But there needs to be some small talk, right? And be prepared that somebody may say, sorry, it's the wrong time, please phone back, and don't be offended, okay? An example on a train. I was sitting somewhere here. The lady was sitting here. I put my bag down here. And by the way, she should be sitting here, right? And, there are different ways to make somebody move the bag. It's in the way, okay? But definitely not, will this bag be standing here the whole journey? I said yes. Can you see that? Why not? Especially that it's not where she... And teaching people to be diplomatic, good manners, vital part of communication in 21st century schools, just because so many people, young people, spend little time with other people, or people they could model themselves on with regard to social relationships. And I believe it still is going to be important, a vital skill, people skills, okay? Even if, the internet and social media take over more and more. Another thing, I would work much more on pronunciation and accents. And this is my personal experience. By the nature of my sort of family and private situation, I live sort of between the UK and Poland. And I have to deal with Her Majesty's Revenues and Customs and banks in England. And of course, when you deal with them, there is some kind of plight. You don't phone them for a chat, right? And whenever I finish a conversation, I'm sort of, oh, my God. And then I say, sake, why, on top of everything, all this stress situation, does this person have to speak heavy Scottish accent or heavy Yorkshire accent? Why? Why? Obviously, people who'll be phoning in will be immigrants as well. There needs to be some kind of accent. And I sat down, and I really stormed in the Pilgrim's office. And this young guy said to me, but Hanna, the voices are chosen with a particular purpose. It's the connotations British people have with particular accents. So, Welsh accent will be legal in insurance companies. Scottish is classless, educated and warm, trustworthy and competent. Yorkshire, tight-fisted, will look after your money, so banks will do. Irish, warm and trustworthy, helplines. And therefore you have got these accents. So, helplines. So more and more you probably need to, and you find articles on that. Once you said accents and trust. So more work on accents to communicate. You need to be able to understand these accents. And this is, sometimes a matter of survival. The same with writing genres. I would say spend much more time with our learners on short forms, like when you go into the working life and your boss says, do you speak English? Yes. Can you write this notice, this notice, this notice? Can you write the menu, right? to save money, they will not employ an interpreter. And just to say that you have to pay for the toilet, for this short message, you get all sorts of rubbish. Toilet pay, toilet payable, toilet to pay. Short forms, functional forms, may be a good way to start writing before we go on to sentence level, right? Another one, I work a lot on pre-med courses, which are courses that introduce many students to study in an international environment. And the mails that they write are horrendous. Like, I'm writing to you to apologize about delayed homework. I was really sick. I had a running nose, a cough, a stomachache. I'll spare you the rest, okay? So what we need to... But they come from an educational system where they left the system with ability to write an email to a tutor like this, right? So much more sort of functional, and how to negotiate with a tutor that your grade, or explain that you're not happy with the grade, how to persuade them to give you a reset. This is all about diplomacy and about being effective, communicating. And then I have a group that is practically native speakers who are preparing to study at the University of Medicine. And then they go with the language over the top. They go into sort of fireworks of language. And when I read these, I think linguistically very good, top grade proficiency. Life-wise, are you pulling my leg? What is that? You're not being serious. All this verbiage is too much. Are you trying to show me that because I'm non-native speaker, I'm worse than you? And all sorts of feelings come in. So I had to tell them, one thing is language class fireworks and show, but then the other one is practical uses and what effect it will have on the reader when he reads your piece of writing. So we have to deal lots and lots of second-year MA students. They send me their assignment with the covering letter. And when I complained about it, another student said, "You're lucky they didn't say this." Okay. And to be fair, I have taught my students to write beautiful covering letters. It takes a month, 2 months if they send assignments. And now, elegant, beautiful, look. Dear professor, here's our Rakaru, the first person speaking. We are very sorry for extra. Music to my ears. I'm a happy tutor, and I start listening to their vocabulary with interest and positive emotions. They have achieved their task. Critical thinking is very important. Making people think, show that you're thinking. And here, critical thinking can be done with pictures. For example, I'm looking at a picture and say, what sounds? Look at the picture and tell me what sounds you can hear. Look, what smells you can smell. And armpits are part of the smell, right? Sweaty armpits. But this shows understanding, critical thinking and understanding. There is a very good book, Teaching Young Learners to Think. I really recommend Herbert Puchter and Marion Williams, which maps up really the various areas that need to be taken on board when we're doing, and I think it will serve beautifully teaching adults. So I really, really recommend. And it's reviewed in Humanizing Language Teaching. There's author's review by Marion Williams, but there's also my review because I run this section, short book review. So every new book that comes out is reviewed. And if the authors themselves want to review their own book, they can review it. Tessa Woodward reviewed High Critical Thinking, so you get lots of information on recent publications. Working on, and can you see echoes of Howard Gardner's teachings of fine arts? Because fine art is a fantastic way to show your interpretation, and there is no one correct answer. And also, you put your own interpretation into it. So when you, a lovely one is here is compare the two paintings, find similarities and differences. And, you know, things you play with on the floor. How many boys, how many girls, which way the adults are pointing, how many people, how many people and how many legs can you see? And the fact of how many feet can you see? And when you look here, you have got 3 people but just 2 feet. So you can practice vocabulary, but it's not obvious mathematics. It's not the one like if there are 3 people, there will be 6 feet. You actually need to start noticing details. Lovely exercise. The other thing that I was talking about yesterday, what I'm really concerned about when it comes to critical thinking, useful as well, is because his book Lifelines was the first. Life was the first book that had critical thinking, or included elements of critical thinking. And he talks about the difference between comprehension, reading or listening comprehension test versus understanding. And one way to do, for example, critical thinking could be take the text about London, which is fine, you do it your usual way, but the course book prescribed. Penny here was talking about treating the course book creatively and developing tasks. One of the tasks that, in my experience, works really well, are the students to rewrite the text of for Warsaw. For another capital, so we have to for Athens, okay? It wouldn't work for Thessaloniki, because it needs to be capital to capital. And if you've got Cambridge, then choose a university town, kind of thing. And this is what the students produce. London is the capital, Warsaw is the capital of Poland. It's in the center of the country, on the river Vistula. When I did it with the Spanish, they had to research the name of the river on which Madrid is, because it's such a small river, nobody knows the name of. There are more 20 bridges in the center now. And here, the Polish students have real problem. Warsaw has very few bridges. So what happens is, and you want to be positive about capital, so there are more and more bridges. So really nice creative stuff, and it's kind of arrow guided writing. It is critical. It needs research. Another one is take text and use the principle of multiple intelligences and add something mathematical, add something emotional, add something interpersonal, intrapersonal, possibly in the description of the town. Or you could add something visual, something auditory, something kinesthetic, and we would be going deeper into the text, exercising also critical thinking. Now, the problem is that when I write entrance exams for university, we need to have a language test with an MA code, not BA code, it's an MA code. Because the BA also becomes the basis of A as a result. And students, the candidates, are really at the end of a very long educational process. They started learning English at the age of 6, and they are now, say, 19 or 21. They want to practice the and they come to comprehension questions. They can't understand it. And I write questions for understanding, but I write another test for translation. They need to understand it, not just on the level of, who said what and who was how old, but really understanding the text, the grain of the text. And it's a disaster. It's a disaster. People who are suits in the past could be described as blue collars, true or false. And they have got the fragment, and they have to decide whether that's true or false. And in this particular text, people who are suits is white collar workers. So it's false. So we write true and false questions for understanding. Or mentioning mirror in this context makes a biblical reference. It's going beyond your old true-false, where everything is in the text. It's also your interpretation, your understanding. And the quote is, if Nero were around today, he would be eating it while Rome burned to the ground, because it was a text about brunch. Similarly, I write open questions. So not just true, false, but open questions. Also big problems. Things like, which phrase echoes the phrase used to? Echoing. What word has got not the synonym, not the same meaning, but echoes, reinforces. Very big problem understanding the cohesion of the text and sort of the linguistic brain. Very big problem. So it's part of it. Describe in your own words a strapless column. And so it's not just answering the question, but also describing. And a circus surrounding every female star, that's about BAFTAs, who poses on a red carpet in a strapless column and no coat in February. Now what would be a strapless column here? Yeah, it's a dress without big problems, and so on. Now creativity and innovation. Alan Maley was here some time ago in Greece. I know he was promoting the C group. I really, really recommend you join it. Just go on C group weekly. There is a big movement these days to be members. Jamie is part of it. Penny. Are you British? You are. Now, the whole issue, April issue of HLT was devoted to creativity. We realized that there is too much testing, too much meeting the targets. We need to have more creativity. Strong movement, please join. But creativity is not only about being creative and creating something in class, but also talking about creative people. If you think you are not creative, or your students are not creative, you can still talk about creativity and address the issue. A very good model is the Disney model. Fantastic book by Edward de Bono, How to Separate a Cat and Dog from Fighting. The children came up with 40 different solutions. Adults came, put the two in the cage, and it just shows the beauty of, sharing ideas. And I love this quote. It's better to have enough ideas for some of them to be wrong than to be always right by having no ideas at all. And it can be talking about creativity, but not necessarily being creative in the classroom. If you think that we don't have the time to develop this project, we still have communication. And for example, of thinking about innovation and alternative solutions. Can you draw a platform at a railway station? And can you picture a platform at a railway station? Yeah. In a very, very busy town, extremely busy town. What's special about this platform? Anything else? Because it's very busy, you can get off this end and this end. It's New Delhi. It's such a phenomenal, New Delhi is such a busy town. The trains are so crowded that people get onto the train from two ends. They also get off because it's just people touch each other very much. So they don't, microphone? Okay. Sorry, I put it down to show something and I forgot. I apologize. So women travel separately, men travel separately in the special compartment for pregnant women, sick people, women with children. It's such a busy, and you looking at such solutions and models is fantastic. Look, the next thing, people want to take their lunches, but they cannot be on the train with lunches that would take up more room on the train. So there is the Dabawala system where people collect your lunches from home and deliver them to your office and then take the empty lunchbox. And can you imagine the complexity of the operation? Now, this is a fantastic project for something to talk about in the classroom, talking about innovation, being creative, finding solutions. And I think it would make a fantastic lesson. a Wikipedia entry on explaining how the lunchboxes are stamped and how things are done. Ingenuity. What could you do with a plastic bag? Brainstorm. Now how about this? This boy won a special kit from Messi because he was so impressed with the boy's creativity. This is a boy from Afghanistan, if I remember correctly. You remember this boy who got handcuffed for making his own clock and they thought he was building a bomb? What do these kids have in common? Lovely idea for a lesson. What do they have in common? Age. What are they interested in? Happy. You know your lesson plan. I don't need to go into detail. What's the catch? The catch is that these are their names. Maciej Mańka, Mateusz Mach, Jack Andraka, Sheena Kerr, I presume. They made, as teenagers, they made groundbreaking inventions. Maciej Mańka improved the lung on the chip. Earlier there was the organs on the chip, TED.com talk. And so there is a chip that simulates your lung so the doctors can see which drugs will work for you rather than endlessly experimenting. So this is organs on a chip and he improved the lung on a chip in the school laboratory. The hip-hop guy tried to invent an app for hip-hop people to communicate on smartphones, and he developed a fantastic app for deaf people who can communicate using sign language. And he is now sort of Dragon's Den candidate and so on, is collecting money for his company, and he's got so many more projects. Why this? Showing that young people can do it. Yeah, and there is creativity, there is inventiveness, okay? Lovely website, 10 amazing discoveries by kids. My role model, my daughter's ex-boyfriend, for this kind of implementing passion, and we need to have more models like this because the kids very often feel that they are pushed into career paths the parents imagine, and what could they achieve taking on board their passions? Maciek is a son. There are 7 sons in the family, and his uncle has got a construction company, so he was forced to study construction engineering, and he did. But his main passion was skateboarding and snowboarding, so he did his degree in designing skate parks. He organizes Baltic Games. He is a construction engineer. He's done it. But he has followed his passion and he, employs so many people and is a very well-known figure in the field. So to show that young people can follow their passions and be successful. Collaboration and working teams, another area. And very interesting projects described in the 21st Century Skills book, showing how I particularly like the SARS project was about teams from different parts of the world cooperating on a project devoted to SARS epidemic, whereas Dutch Garden Project was school children who wanted to improve the town, so they decided to create a garden in a sort of wasteland in the town. They designed the garden, they collected the money, they wrote a project for the city council. Eventually they implemented the project and they created the garden. Project work, okay? And of course this leads to lots of learner autonomy and fantastic ideas in humanizing language teaching. A project called the Travel Buddy. A nice idea could be, as a topic in the classroom, in the UK they now collect items and handbags for homeless ladies. Now, what would you put into such a bag? What would you donate? And unfortunately, it's only for women. What about a homeless man? You know, a little backpack for a homeless man. So, we could have one project for thinking what would go into the bags of the homeless ladies, what we would donate and how we would put them together. Interesting enough, plush toys were very important, where the luxuries, not just the practicalities, but there was also this element of caring. And of course, the problem is project evaluation, and this is our concern. If we do some creativity projects in the classroom, how do we evaluate them? If we do project work, how to evaluate? But I think our assessment system needs revisiting. And yesterday, you heard the statement, catch them while they are good. It's catch them while they are doing something worth getting a grade, something that they could be given a grade for or recognition for. Our system is far too rigid, like grammar, vocabulary, and I know that you are creative and you will find different ways, but I think we need to find many more ways, and the same would be with project evaluation. When it comes to media literacy and applying technology, we had some very interesting talk today about blended learning. There is always the thing, your tool, my tool. The most important thing, not too many tools and be confident with them. But I would like to, so, I'm into corpus linguistic. I like ready materials that I perfect, so I like learning English, learningenglish.com. But these are my preferred tools. My students told me that they like Speak English and the Engvid website. And some teachers swear by these websites. Everybody has got their own. But I think the most important thing, and this was mentioned in the vlogging talk, is the important thing about the competences, what the young learners can do, and being aware what they should be able to do with the computers. And this is something I got from some Ministry of Education evaluation stuff. How to use it, can the students use a computer, access information and evaluate it, manage information, transform information, create information, share information, use information in a safe way. These were the categories the ministry came up with to check the students' competences. And I think it's fantastic guidelines for what we might want to include in digitalization of teaching. How do they manage information? Do they copy-paste or do they process the information? How do they create information? How do they share information? Okay. And it also involves preparing presentations, writing assignments, group work, organizing, managing time and work, filling in worksheets, doing exercises, writing tests, writing about own learning, group work, working with learners from other schools. So all this is IT. But the most important thing is rights. And I came across this by pure coincidence, reading a text by Susan Moore, who writes for The Guardian, and I really like her texts. And she actually discovered this by accident, and she wrote about it, and I want to share with you. This is a website which talks about the rights that you have to do with iLearning and the vlogging. And actually when Jamie was talking about the YouTube film, Charlie Bit Me, the possibility to remove this. When Charlie grows up, Charlie might want to remove this. And he's got the right to remove. So the I rights, the right to remove, the right to know. Children should know who is holding or profiting from their information, whether it's being traded. The right to support, to receive support and safety. The right to digital literacy, and the right to conscious and informed choices. These texts will make for fantastic language class using this material, and it will kill two birds with one stone. It will have language, but it will also have the message that it carries. Okay. Professionalism and work ethics. Lots about role models. And I find very often course book texts bland. They bring nothing. And sometimes the publishers decide that this is inappropriate. Let me give you an example. When I was writing a course book for teenagers, in the section on health, I put in something about osteoporosis. And what happened? The publisher said, why should a teenager be interested in reading about osteoporosis? And please replace. And my argument was, of all the diseases, it's in their interest to know their mum, their granny, do get checked. Because if they break a bone, it's your problem. Make sure that they look after themselves. No, I didn't win, but I think we can still bring in texts like this relevant to the students. So let's talk about professionalism. Values. Oxfam Unwrapped. In the consumer society, donate a present. My grandson's present from my partner for the christening was medical examination for 10 African children. Okay? My Christmas presents are goats and hens that go to people who need it more than me. Lovely idea how to fight consumer societies. How to own up when there is an honesty box. To put in money or not put money. When do people put money? Do you use honesty boxes in Greece? They don't work in Poland. They work in Austria, but not in Poland, you know. And there was research, and it shows when it's flowers, nobody puts in money. When it's women's eyes, nobody puts in money. It's only men's eyes that work. Plagiarizing. Thanks for stealing my art. Somebody stole somebody else's art and put on a credit card that is being circulated. Respecting intellectual property, very important issue. Fantastic area to look at. It's the Xiao, the Chinese philosophy of looking after parents, after old people in the family. If you don't do, you get punished. You can be put to prison in China. Now, talking about the rights, regularly take your parents to the doctor for checkups. Make sure they have petty cash. Help your parents fulfill their childhood dreams. Visit people with them. Often take their photos. And the students could come up with their ideas that would work with the culture. But really, what kind of old age would you like to have? Give it to the senior members of your family. This is what it really is. It's a kind of continuity, but making young people aware of that. Okay, now, and the last one, leadership and project management. I have briefly mentioned projects. The SARS project and the garden project. Of course, do we have the time? Perhaps we have got some spare capacity for projects, but in the classroom time we've got 2 lessons a week. Can we do something? Again, I would say leadership and management can be done through texts, like analyzing these points. Why would they be important? Do what you love, put a dent in the universe, kickstart your brain, sell dreams, not products. Say no to 1,000 things. Create insanely great experiences. Master the message. Who said that? Steve Jobs. So he can be the springboard for talking about innovation and before our students can engage in innovation. And how can we tap into our students' innovation if they will develop a lung on the chip or app for deaf people? You know, language class is not the right forum. School education is the right forum. But I think we can at least have texts that take this on board. So, and a very good website, The Real Leadership Lessons of Steve Jobs. So, I have talked you through these 7 areas. My interpretation of how I take on board the critical thinking, how I take on board 21st century skills, how I take on board innovativeness, everything that belongs to 21st century skills, through texts, not necessarily through actually doing the thing, because, like I said, too little time. If you have any questions, please get in touch. English classes do already lots of the things. I feel I do lots of the things. I'm sure you're doing a lot of the things. Perhaps just tweak a bit more. Perfect. We have not figured out how to prepare youngsters so that they can survive and thrive in a world different than one ever known before. But I'm sure we can try. Thank you very much. I apologize for losing the mic now and then to the people at the back. Great apologies, I tend to forget. I will circulate now the list if you would like to be on the mailing list for pilgrims for the humanizing language teaching. Thank you very much.
Dziękujemy. A little bit of Polish. Thank you so much.